So here we are, lesson number 12, the last in this series for Vital Survival. I really appreciate the fact that you've made it this far. It's really good that you have come this far. But what I want to do now is develop anybody listening and anybody that you can help, so that as you move forward, you continue to progress and get better in getting ready for survival and disaster readiness. You know, there's a quote I'm really fond of, and it says something like this. I'm paraphrasing. You don't practice until you get something right. You continue training until you cannot get it wrong. That brings up a good topic of conversation. What is practice? What is training? What is testing? What is all that? Is it the same? Is it different? It's all actually very different, and understanding those differences is vitally important. I'm going to help you with that in this particular lesson. The way I want to get started is I want to discuss what is commonly referred to as the scientific method. You probably learned this in 8th grade science class. It's fantastic. It's real simple. It's the same scientific method that scientists utilize in laboratories and different fields of study all over the world every day. So let's get started with it, and we'll learn how to apply it to survival by walking around in the woods. All right, scientific method. Again, it's rather simple, but man, is it useful for you developing your skill set. The first thing you want to do is ask yourself a question. I'll give a couple of examples. I think if I go out with this sleeping bag in 20-degree weather, I'll stay warm. Or I think the bark from this tree is going to be useful as a fire starter. Something of that nature. Just ask a question, something that you would like to know. The next step in the scientific process is you start to do the research. And the beautiful thing about research is that you have YouTube, you have books, you have the internet, you have other people, you can go to classes, you can study, research, and start to get an idea of what you think is going to happen. The next step is you form a hypothesis. You basically make a guess. Yeah, it's going to work after the research. After you do that, you then actually experiment. For example, if we talk about that sleeping bag again, we actually take our sleeping bag, get into the backyard in 20-degree weather, sleep in it, find out, yep, we stayed warm, or nope, we didn't. That's an experiment. And then after we do this experimentation, what we do is we analyze the results. You know, in our particular case, yeah, we stayed warm, or no, we didn't. That's the results. Once we discover those results, we then share that with others. They'll probably do something similar, maybe something different, and if you work with others, then we can come to a firm conclusion of what works and what doesn't work. That might seem a little bit, I don't know what, hard to understand. So what I want to do is I actually want to walk through the woods and actually do that with some fire building supplies, and we'll see what happens. So again, here's an example for you. I have a question. I wonder if this bark will light if I put a lighter to it. That's the question. So what's next in the process? Well, I do some research. This actually is a sweet gum tree. So what I can do is I can get online, study some YouTube videos, find a book, and let's say that I do that and I just don't find anything. So I make the guesstimate because, hey, I know trees that this is not going to work, because quite frankly, I don't think it's going to. Okay, I make that guesstimate. Then I take some of that bark. This is where the experimentation comes in. I crush it up. Maybe I just use it the way it is. I get my lighter out of my pack and I light it. And even with a good lighter, well, it's starting to get going, but it just kind of sizzles and doesn't do much. So no, that's not good. That's my results. This is what I put together as my results. So now I call my buddy, one of the other instructors with Nature Reliance, and say, hey man, I was trying to make a fire with the bark from a sweet gum tree and it didn't work. So won't you try it and see what happens? Because when he tries it, maybe it needs to be drier. Maybe it needs to be a different kind of tree. Maybe it needs to be a different kind of lighter. And so by the time we put all of our heads together, try different things in different pieces and parts of the process, then we'll come up with a firm conclusion. That's how you apply the scientific process to anything that you want to try to test and study. So that is a fantastic method to do anything like that for survival and disaster readiness. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's 3 things that we want to take a look at, and they're all different. Let's think about practice, training, and testing. Now, typically in the modern world, most of us, when we think about practice, we think about some sort of music practice or basketball practice or something of that nature. And it's probably a pretty good word for that, meaning you're just trying new things out or you're putting new things together. As it relates to basketball, a team might try out a new play, or hey, you've got a new idea for a jump shot. As it relates to survival and preparedness, it might be that, hey, I think I can walk 10 miles if my car breaks down. And so you actually just go out and walk 10 miles. That's practice. Practice is where you're getting into that particular role and position where really there's nothing that is out there that's problematic if you fail. It's just practice, right? You might have a coach that tells you to do certain things if you do it wrong, but it's just practice. Training is where you start to take what it is that you've done in practice and you start to add stressors. So for example, in training, you might be making a fire and you've made fires hundreds and hundreds of times, but now in training, you're doing it in a way that you can add anything that you want to. I want to use all the materials that I can for fire building. It used to be maybe that you only did bow drill fires, or you only made fires utilizing a lighter. You only use a ferro rod or something of that nature. But in training, you do whatever it takes to make a fire. And then testing is typically where you can do this solo, but it's usually best where you have someone, usually a mentor or a teacher, a trainer, friend, or somebody that challenges you with unexpected variables. That's a big one. Think about it from a basketball perspective again. That's where you go into a home team's court where they have the advantage and the crowd does something crazy while you're shooting free throws. That's the sort of thing that is testing yourself. Hey, you've sat there and shot a whole lot of free throws, but now your coach tried to do something where you were in training to prepare for that stress, and now you're testing yourself where it matters. Same thing with survival and disaster readiness. Having a mentor or a coach to tell you, hey, you are utilizing your ferro rod incorrectly, or some variation of it, is incredibly valuable when you're testing yourself. So with that said, that is practice versus training versus testing. There's a time for each. And let's get into the next step and we'll start getting you prepared more mentally for what's to come. All right, so I want to bookend this course with a little bit of what we started with, because this is incredibly valuable. It's the foundation of what it is that is vital survival, and it's also what you need to understand about yourself as you continue to move forward, whether you're getting yourself prepared for disaster, survival, going to boot camp for the first time, going to college, you're going to get married soon, you're getting ready to have your first child, your first child's getting ready to go to boot camp. Whatever it is, you need to prepare yourself, and there's 4 ways that you prepare yourself. Let's review. Mindset, skills, tactics, and gear. There's things in each one of those that is important as it relates to practice, training, and testing. Do not forget that. So we've talked specifically in this last lesson on skill development. You need to practice, you need to train, and you need to test your mindset. You need to do that for skills like we've already talked about. You need to do that with others. That's tactics. And you need to do that with gear. So for example, I showed on this last lesson just pulling that bark out and trying it with a lighter. I could have tried it with a different lighter. I could have tried it with a ferro rod. I could have tried it with a propane torch. It probably would have caught fire. So these are things where we have to determine mindset, skills, tactics, and gear, and it requires you to spend a lot of time and effort making sure that you're absolutely totally prepared. There is no silver bullet, as they say. There is no secret. There is no one little thing that I can tell you. That's why when we started this course, we intended it to be about 3 or 4 videos, and we pushed it out to 12. It requires that much, and it requires a downloadable book to go along with it. So check that out as well. These are the things that you need to be able to do to, again, get yourself prepared. It's practice. Practice a lot. Remember, it's going to take a lot of reps. It's not going to happen the first time you get it. If it does happen the first time you get it, that doesn't mean you're good at it. That just means that you were very fortunate and you got it on the first lick, whatever that takes. It takes a whole lot of training. For example, building a fire on a day like this is difficult because there's a lot of humidity in the air. It's kind of sprinkled here a couple times, a lot of humidity. You would think that on a dry day like today, it's really easy to make a fire. I've taught thousands of people how to make fire, and we run into major trouble when the weather's like this. Even the seasons can change. I might be able to make a fire now, but does that change in the fall, the spring, the winter, what have you? These are all things that you need to continue to do, to study, so that you can prepare yourself and you're actually ready for survival. I'm not wanting to be a downer. I just want to be honest with you and tell you it's going to take some effort. But here's the beautiful thing, and this is where it's going to be really, really advantageous for you. Being more self-reliant and not dependent upon others is one of the greatest feelings in the world. You'll walk around with confidence. You'll walk around with the ability to know that you've worked hard to get where you are, and if something bad happens, you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to take care of yourself. You're going to be able to take care of your family, and that sort of feeling is worth $1 million. And you can do that. Follow along with these lessons. Follow along with what I've recommended for practice and training and testing, to test yourself, to push yourself beyond your self-imposed limits. And the world is yours. You can conquer anything. Come on, join in. Let's learn together.